The shiur was titled Binyan Hefsek Acharei Nitilat Yadayim L'Seuda, regarding the topic of interrupting after washing your hands for a meal. Now this is the copy and paste from a source sheet that I made when I was teaching in Yeshivat in Israel at the time. And I'm going to tell you the truth is, in today's world, if I were to redo the source sheet, there would be some things that were different, some things that were worded different. I would bring a larger variety of sources than I had access to at that time in my learning career. But this is important because it's foundational. So these are the main sources that you can find in every... I'm not quoting here off the chart sources. There are some sources I quote here I probably wouldn't quote again if I was doing the class again. But it's always humbling when you go back in time and see what your limitations were. You know, this is almost 10 years old. Like, what was I thinking like then? But one thing that was consistent was the same. I gave a halakha class. Most rabbis don't want to teach halakha in yeshiva. It's not the cool thing to do. You know, you want to teach a Gemara class, serious intent. You want to teach maybe some Chassidut or Kabbalah, whatever's going to make you look cool. Halakha is what everyone has already burned out from studying. Do this, don't do that, how to heat up chicken on Shabbat, and all these things that like nobody really cares about. Tell us again why we can't swim on Shabbat, why you can't ride your bike on Shabbat, why you can't open an umbrella on Shabbat. Tell us again how you might come to build a raft if you take a shower. Like, all the things that nobody really connects to. What I wanted to teach my students then is the same thing I fight for today, is nobody should ever teach you halakha without providing you sources. And even if they're going to provide you a narrow view of sources, at least you have the sources in your hand to go build up on your own. If you ask someone a halakha question and they don't quote sources, there's Rabbi so-and-so so this, Rabbi so-and-so that, who cares? What does that mean? Rabbeinu Abraham ben Aramba. Do I have a copy of one of the books here? I do. Wow, it's a miracle. I almost took this home on Saturday night. Rabbeinu Abraham ben Aramba writes. And I take one from the bottom because the top one has a typo. So you can take all of them, one in hand out when people come. Rabbeinu Avraham ben Rambam writes in his introduction to the Agadah of Chazal. This letter was considered so blasphemous by the rabbis of Ashkenaz that some people claimed it was a forgery because it couldn't be that the son of the Rambam will write such a heretical letter. Okay, if you know the Rambam, you know his son, you know that these letters are not hard for them to write. That you should know. Ki ata chayav ladat. That you must certainly know. Know that you must certainly know. This means you really have to know this. Ki mi shirtzeh lehamid dat yidua. Anybody that wants to establish an opinion, I mean, you won't need to accept this opinion. V'lisad pnei omra. And they want you to show favoritism because of the person who said it. ולקבל דעתו בלי עיון והבנה לעניין אותו דעת כי באמת אתה אם לא. And they're demanding from you to accept this opinion because of who said it, but not to analyze the reason for why it was said, or the sources that made the author say it. שזה מן הדעות הרעות. This is one of the most evil character traits. To ask people to accept wisdom from other people just because of the name or the reputation of the author. V'hu ne'esar miderech haTorah. It's forbidden from the ways of the Torah to demand that people accept something because someone important said it. V'gam miderech hasechel. It's also a crime against your mind. It's forbidden in the ways of logic to simply accept things without analyzing the logic behind them. This teaching is so important and is so foundational. And this is what the Torah is built on. It doesn't make a difference who said it. When someone says something, you have an obligation to analyze the logic behind it, the equation behind it, the theory. Why did they come to this conclusion? If you don't analyze the logic, you are forbidden from accepting an opinion just because it was said by someone important. Yes?
We are taught, if we have a halakha question, to go to our rabbi to ask what to do in certain situations. That's assuming that the rabbi has the knowledge
to answer
the question. If the rabbi gives the answer, do we just accept it, or do we ask for an explanation?
Isn't obstructing different? That's what he's talking about.
That's a great question. That's a great question. So I will agree with Jack. We are taught this way. Yes, that's precisely what the education is. And I think in Judaism it's very difficult to avoid that there is a double standard in Judaism. The double standard being the way Talmidei Chachamim and their students interact with Torah, and the way the Hamonam, the ignoramuses of the Jewish community are taught to interact with the Torah. It would be unthinkable in the Beit HaMidrash for someone to say, accept the words of the rabbi just because he's the rabbi. Almost like it would be unthinkable for the Chachamim that someone who has no context in which to understand a halachic conversation will then be explained to the halachic logic behind something. And unfortunately, what we've educated the masses are that they should be, instead of being from the Chachamim or their students, they should be from the ignoramuses who are unable to process the information that is told to them. Kind of like when Elchanan will ask a question, he'll get a very juvenile answer. But if Chaz v'Shalom, you were to ask the question and I would give you the same answer, you should be offended. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
And therefore, the concept of asel hara, by the way, the idea of making for yourself a rabbi, is not a blind following of a personality. It's understanding that this person is very knowledgeable in their halachic sources and absolutely asking them to explain why it is that something is that way. In fact, there's a to the contrary, there's a ruling that it's forbidden for a student of a Talmid Chacham to accept the rulings of his rabbi if he cannot logically comprehend. It's forbidden. They're not allowed to. And part of what you have to do is struggle with the Talmid Chacham. What does it say? Most people say you should sit at the dust of their feet, of the scholars. Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin writes in his book Ruach Chaim that the word mitabek doesn't mean to sit at the dust of someone's feet. Rather, mitabek is used one time in the Torah where there's an angel that comes to fight with Yaakov. What does it say? Vayivater Yaakov levado. Yaakov was left on his own. Vaye'avek ish imo. And there was a man that came to fight with him. Adalat hashachar, until the dawn. They asked him, what's your name? Why do you ask my name? Right? Let's remember this story. Vaye'avek is the word to fight, to struggle. He got in a physical struggle with this angel. Now read the Kehillat again. Vehevei mit'abek ba'afar reglehem. You must struggle. You must fight with the Talmidei Chachamim. But how do you fight with the Talmidei Chacham? Ba'afar reglehem. I'm still sitting at the dust of your feet. I'm still your student. But I can't accept that you're going to say something and I should just believe it because you said it. There are a few times in my learning by Rav Peretz that something that he said just didn't sit with me. It didn't sit right with me. And I went and I fought with him. I told him, you have an obligation to fight with me. You have an obligation to hear me out and to convince me that you're right. He did, and when he didn't, he didn't. What can I do? It's forbidden for a student to accept the teaching of his rabbi when they don't sit with him. It's this other side of the coin of make for yourself a rabbi we don't talk about so much. And this idea of there are sources, and the sources are important. You know, somebody once came to Rav Yitzchak Abadi and asked him a question. And he said, well, go ask your Rebbe, go ask your Rav. He tells him, I don't have a Rav. He says, well, here's what you should do. Go to the Beit Midrash and do vidui. You confess your sins that you don't have a Rav. And then find a Rav and ask him this question. I do this to people all the time. I get phone calls, especially in San Diego, from people who the whole year don't talk to me. Come Pesach time, come some kashrut issue that comes out. They go, Rabbi, what do you think about? I say, go ask your local Orthodox rabbi. No, I'm not. Okay, so I'm going to give you the answer your local Orthodox rabbi will tell you. No, that's not kosher for Pesach. But Rabbi, you said, I said I wasn't saying it to you. You're not my student. You're not part of my community. I'm not answering your question. I am not your rabbi. Don't ask me questions that you wouldn't follow the rest of the year.
And also it keeps you out of trouble because they would just bring it back to the community and say, see.
And every year, I put out a video or a post on my Facebook groups. This forum is only open to those people who consider themselves my students, or to those people who have no rabbi and therefore are forced to consider themselves my students. But I don't answer questions for anybody who comes from another community. I also my book, I understand how far I go to this. In my book, I write an introduction. This book, nothing in this book is allowed to be used to fight with the rabbi of your kehillat. You don't like the kehillat, leave. But don't use my information to fight with the rabbi of your kehillat. But I require from my students to know The Torah has sources, and all. So Rav Abadi once wrote in a letter of his. Peretz was Abbas said someone came to us. Oh, it says a Rambam. Oh, we don't follow Rambam. So Abbas, I don't understand. He said, you see all the books on the shelf here. There's a Talmud, there's a Rambam, there's Shulchan Aruch. He said, why do you take all these books and throw them in the trash and write your own book called Sefer HaMinhagim, the Book of Customs? Don't laugh. There are many Sefer HaMinhagims nowadays.
Yeah?
Yeah. Is it all of Judaism? You're gonna what he said? What are these books for decoration? You're decorating yourselves with these books. Either you listen to the books or you decorate the shelves with the books. And it can't be that you read it, but you don't. Just the other day, I had a conversation with Talmid Chacham. Oh, yeah, Rabbi said you study Rambam, but be very careful not to rule halakha like the Rambam. So why waste your time studying the Rambam? Go study something else. I mean, study something that you can follow. Why would you study a book? I know I can't follow this book.
That's why are you reading it?
That's like self-afflicting Torah study.
Supplication.
You should know, there are books from my Talmid Chachamim. I know there's no way in the world I can resonate with Talmid Chacham. I just don't read the book. The reason I know that there's nothing in the book I can rely on, so I don't read it. How could you bring yourself to read something? I want to be able to read a book of, when I read a book of Hosea, of Masas, I know that I may not rule this way in every case, but I would only read the book of a Talmid Chacham knowing that in one case I will rely on this person. When push comes to shove and I need this is the head, I trust this Chacham. I don't know where they draw there's a thing in the Jewish world today. People are reading all kinds of books of rabbis they've discovered. And there were always rabbis that are on the strange. They were on the were they really Shomei Torah mitzvot? Were they not? Were they philosophers that really believed in Hashem? If you understand anything about Jewish philosophy, you know who I'm talking about. There's a few rabbis like that. I say, why bother studying Torah for this person? Why? What's the point? Was this rabbi really a predator? Or was he not? Why do you have to waste your time with some books? There are Talmidei Chachamim you could really read. So here, I brought you some sources. Is anyone else missing a source sheet? Okay, if anybody needs, they're right here. Let's look at source number 1. I didn't have a chance to number them because again, this is an old source.
Which book of
This is actually a book called Milchamot Hashem. It seems to be.
Oh, yeah,
it's
I
the
have the
word.
English,
Yeah, you
yeah.
have it in English. I think Fred Rosner or something like that translated it. Exactly. And then in the back they added all kinds of letters that are not previously printed. The rabbi who did this was a famous Ashkenazi Chacham called Rabbi Reuven Margolius. He when you get his hands on his books, brilliant. Really, he was like a real researcher. Yes.
So, if your rabbi, your teacher told you something, it does not resonate with you. So you asking for the sources.
Yes.
And he shows you sources, and sources does not resonate with you. Where do you stop? How far you can go to prove that it's or disprove?
Here I thought we were going to start. And this question is important. So I'll tell you, in the context of our Beit HaMikdash, there are certain things that doesn't make a difference what you like or don't like. They must be accepted in order to. There must be a basic premise of. A famous philosopher wrote about this. That really there's nothing you could prove because anything that you prove, you have to rely on a basic. You have to believe in something in order to prove something, and it's this. You know what philosophers like to do? They sit there all day thinking about things that don't have any grounding in reality. There was a philosopher like this. We're assuming that a person believes in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Torah that we have on Mount Sinai, and that the teachings of the Torah on Mount Sinai are best explained by the Chachamim who wrote the Mishnah and the Talmud. In the words of the Rambam, until the sealing of the Talmud, every Jew must accept everything that's written until then. Everything afterwards is already not an obligation for you to accept. So, for example, my demand that people will adhere to Maran, the Shulchan Aruch, it's my demand. But if you are an Ashkenazi Jew or a Yemenite Jew who follows the Rambam or whatever else you are, you don't have to agree with my demand that people should follow Maran. But the Gemara, there's no group that can come in the Jewish community. We reject the teachings of the Torah Shabbat Peh, the oral Torah. And so I guess that's how far back you go. The rabbi has an obligation to align his teachings with the text that we all must accept until the sealing of the Talmud. After that, it's already open game. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. Rabbi Reuven Margolius. I don't know how you spell that, with an O or an A. In Hebrew, it's Margaliot, but that one, the Wars of Hashem. That's what the Wars of the Lord. Maybe they have it. They have it in English.
Okay.
So in this class, we'll try to understand whether or not one is allowed to speak after washing for bread. We will follow the entire halachic process, analyzing each step in depth. Please follow each step of this process on the chart. You don't have the chart in front of you. Marlene has it inside of her book. I saw it yesterday.
I have.
Yeah, you see this? Normally, I would make my students who study halakha use this chart and follow the whole way through where are we up to on the chart. But it doesn't make a difference for today. We're starting. The origin of washing your hands is rabbinic. Yeah, so you're not going to find any sources before our rabbis about washing your hands. That's why the first source is on the right column that says Mikol Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud. This is found on page 42a of the Babylonian Talmud. So if you want to go to Sefaria, most of these sources you can find on Sefaria. Like I said, I specifically chose not to use exotic sources so people can find these sources, and when you do have a discussion with somebody about why you're talking after you wash your hands, you can show them these in your own library. Damar Rabbi Chia bar Ashi. Rabbi Chia bar Ashi said, you see where I am? Amar Rav, in the name of Rav, Shalosh tchifot hen. There are three things that must happen immediately, one after the next. Techef l'smicha shchita. You see, I mixed those two up yesterday. I read them out of order. I got all of them, but out of order. Techef l'smicha shchita. When you lean on the animal before you slaughter it in the Beit HaMikdash, you immediately have to do shchita. So techef. Techef means immediately afterwards. Immediately after smicha, leaning, is shchita, is slaughtering. Techef ligula, tefila. Immediately after the blessing of Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael, you immediately have to do the Amidah. Yeah. Now again, almost everything we said last night, but we're analyzing today's text. Immediately after saying the blessing of Ga'al Yisrael, of the redemption, you immediately have to start the Amidah, the silent prayer. And in bold, that's important for us, Techef l'ntilat yadayim beracha. Immediately after washing your hands, you have to make a blessing. Remember that in this point in Jewish history in the Talmud, nobody is making blessings of netilat yadayim after they wash their hands. So it cannot mean that right after you wash your hands, you make the blessing of washing your hands, because nobody was doing that then. That custom develops only later in Jewish history. So immediately after washing your hands, you must make a blessing. And I wrote, based on your own logic or assumption, what is the Gemara referring to when it states that techef netilat yadayim beracha? So we mentioned then, last night, that our automatic thought is perhaps, hey, this is talking about washing your hands for bread. And right after you wash your hands for bread, you can't make any noise until you make hamotzi lechem minaretz. That's probably what most of us will think about, because we have this practice that we don't talk after we wash our hands for bread. So when we read the Talmud, we read it like Jews that are practicing Judaism of today, which is not to talk after you wash your hands. Let's look at the two commentaries on the Talmud, Rashi on one side and Tosafot on the other side. So you see Rashi? L'ntilat yadayim. What does nitilat yadayim? Says Rashi, nitilat yadayim demayim acharonim. I should have numbered these sources, but I didn't have a chance to. Where it says Rashi, immediately after mayim acharonim, the waters you wash before you do Bet Hey Mem Zayin, Birkat HaMazon. Yeah? Velo yochal klum ad shivarech lemezono. You can't eat anything until you finish doing Birkat HaMazon. So, at the point you wash your hands, says Rashi, you cannot interrupt. What is the example that Rashi uses of interrupting? What's the interruption between washing and Birkat HaMazon?
I remember last night you said could be seen at the table longer than it take to...
Right, we read it from the Ramah. What did Rashi say? Lo yochal klum. You're not allowed to eat anything ad shivarech lemezono until you say Birkat HaMazon. What's the definition of interruption? Eating something.
Eating.
You're going to notice the idea of talking is not found anywhere here in these sources. Okay? So even if you wanted to argue that talking is an interruption, you're going to have a hard time finding early sources that are using that term. An action is an interruption. Talking. Tosafot. Who wrote the Tosafot?
It was like the people, the like sons and stuff of
Very
Rashi.
Some of them are grandsons of Rashi. It's a bunch of French and German rabbis. There's no one author of Tosafot. Tosafot, right? Techef l'ntilat yadayim beracha. Immediately after hand washing, you make a blessing. V'hilkach. Therefore, kevan shnatal yadav b'charona. Once you've washed your hands at the end, lachar suda, after the meal, asur lechol. It's forbidden to eat. Ad shivarech, until you say Birkat HaMazon. V'hu adin, and that's the same halacha. Imamar havlan v'nivrich. once the chazan, once the leader of the meal says Havlan v'nivrich, or in Ashkenazi you would say Rabotai nevarich, once that's said, afilu belo netila, even when there's no hand washing, I mean that from the moment that the beginning of the end of the meal happens, you're not allowed to eat anymore. Notice here that Tosafot is an Ashkenazi rabbi who's saying Havlan v'nivrich, which is a Sephardic zimun. Because clearly at this point in time, the Ashkenazim still didn't come up with Rabotai nevarich. Just something to think about. One day, we'll sit down and learn the Siddur and where everything comes from and how things were worded and put into play, and it'll surprise you very much. What?
I'm not sure what you said about.
When Ashkenazim do a zimun today, they say Rabotai nevarich,
Yeah.
or Sfaradim say Havlan v'nivrich makar la'kedisha. That's Aramaic. That's also quoted in the Talmud. So Tosafot, when he talks about the zimun, he says Havlan v'nivrich. He doesn't say Rabotai nevarich. Meaning, even though he's a German French rabbi, at that point in time they're still using the original Talmudic Birkat Hamazon, which is that,
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
of course. So basically, both Rashi and Tosafot. How do Rashi and Tosafot understand the Gemara? Which water are we talking about? Which hand washing? Not the hand washing on bread, rather it's the hand washing at the end of the meal. Maim acharonim. And what is the blessing that you cannot interrupt between hand washing and the blessing? What is the blessing? Birkat Hamazon, the blessing after meals. And what is the example of making an interruption?
Eating.
Is eating. Once you wash your hands, you can't eat anymore. So the people who wash their hands, they start picking up all the crumbs off the table from the challah, and they're eating. I see the people, the little sesame seeds. Those are.
But there's a different status from the washing before to the washing after. Like you said, many Jews don't even do one.
That's right. So we're still going in the Talmudic times where everybody did Ma'amachoni. Yes? So does this differ with the original understanding? For those of you who were in Shiur last night, you already know the original understanding is different. Meaning, yes, you would think this Talmud is referring to the hand washing before the meal, but really it's referring to the hand washing after the meal.
And some of the times when we read about the Salt Stone.
Yes, but that's a side point. Meaning that's, you're right, that's what Zev said, which is today things may change. I'm dealing with my Mechonim as an obligation. Rambam Hilchot Brachot. Yesterday I read to you the beginning of chapter 6. This comes from the 19th chapter in chapter 6. Rambam Hilchot Brachot, Perek Vav, 6th chapter, Halacha Yud Tet, subsection 19. So if you want to find this Rambam, you go to Sefaria. You click Halacha, you click Rambam, or Mishnah Torah, whatever is written there. Then you would click the laws of Brachot, chapter 6, subsection 19, you'll find it.
6:19, chapter 6, verse 19.
B'chol hanotel yadav b'charona. Then everybody who washes his hands at the end of the meal. Minagev, he has to dry his hands. When's the last time, aside from here, they passed around a towel for you to dry your hands after a amount of way?
Never
That
seen
people think that you're supposed to keep rubbing your hands till they dry. Nobody's even handing out a towel. Ask somebody, when you pour a little bit of water on your hands, and then you rub it into your hands, you didn't actually wash your hands. What you did is you got all the dirt in your hands wet, and then you rubbed it into the rest of your hands. I've never understood this. It doesn't make any sense to me.
So this is talking about Akranim.
Ma'amachoni, yes.
After the meal.
Yes, very
So
good.
it's strange because it's important to dry your hands before washing, before the meal, because for Ashkenazim at least, they're still saying the bracha for on the Netilat Yadayim while they dry their hands. But after the meal, when they say, when they do Akranim, most people just go like this and
That's right.
Yeah, just
And there is an argument in halakha whether or not you have to dry your hands after ma'amachoni. You're right. There is
Yeah.
an argument about it. I'm happy to do that another night if you want to learn about that. But according to the Rambam, you must dry your hands just like you dry your other. In my house, we hand around a towel with ma'amachoni. It's a big cup. We use a big cup, a big bowl, and sometimes if it's a big meal, we refill the cup a few times. And I don't even I don't even really hold you have to do ma'amachoni, but I'm doing it so people don't throw tomatoes in. V'achar kach mevarech, and then afterwards you make a blessing. After you do Mayim Achonim, remember the Rambam said yesterday, Mayim Achonim you don't make a blessing on because it's not a halakha, it's only there because of health reasons, so you don't die from the salt of snow, or you don't get blind.
Right.
So there's no blessing on it. So which blessing is he talking about? The right after you dry your hands, you have to bless. Very good. Birkat Hamazon. V'techef netilat yadayim birkat Hamazon. The Rambam reads it explicitly. And immediately after washing your hands, you must say Birkat Hamazon. He doesn't say the blessing, you just say Birkat Hamazon. He spells it out. Lo yafsik benehem b'dvar acher. You cannot interrupt doing anything between washing your hands and Birkat Hamazon. V'afilu lishtot mayim, and even to drink water. Achar shenotel yadav b'charona, after you've washed mayim acharonim, asur ad shiver Birkat Hamazon. It's forbidden to even drink water until you finish doing Birkat Hamazon. Which means you can't do mayim acharonim and then finish your glass of tea.
Yeah.
Or the last few pieces of, watermelon before your dessert.
It's optional, and most people look at it as optional anyways, and to be so strict about
It is
yeah.
great. It sounds
really
almost-
strange.
Yeah.
All the time maybe it was different.
As the first posek to discuss this Gemara. I'm actually not sure the first. I told you, I wrote this when I was younger. Unlike the above Rishonim who are commentators, what does the Rambam say the Gemara is referring to? So let's understand. Rashi and Tosafot, they are commentators. What's the difference in a commentator and a posek?
They comment on something that's been established already by a higher source, or a more authoritative source.
Not necessarily. That's actually not the difference. You just said the first part was right.
A posek is making a decision about the law, and a commentator is commenting on different people.
We don't rule halakha like Rashi. Rashi is a commentator. But there are some times where Rashi or the other commentators will interpret the Gemara incorrectly, on purpose. What I'm trying to... They'll comment on it as a commentary, knowing that commentary is not the halachic definition of what they're commenting on. Because you need to understand it as a text. They're there to help you understand the text. If you want to understand this text, the halakha, you have to read it differently. But many people make a mistake when they read through Torah, or they read through the Talmud, and they're reading the commentaries. They think those commentaries are halachic commentaries. They are not. They're commentaries.
Yeah.
And it's very... People don't realize the difference. They're poskim, they're mefarshim. They're not the same. They're not the same thing. In today's world, again, where Zev mentioned about last night, to learn how to analyze things properly, today's world, even inside of the Beit HaMikdash, no one is actually analyzing things accurately.
Yeah.
Nuance is lost entirely. People are mixing up. There's a war with the Rambam and the Rosh Hashiva in Lakewood. All due respect to Rosh Hashiva in Lakewood, he's not the Rambam. It's not even like.
Close.
You don't even have the. Well, you tell somebody, the Talmud says. Well, my rabbi said. No offense to your rabbi, he's not the Talmud. He's not. What can you do? So the Rambam is the first posek that we're dealing with, who rules that don't interrupt between washing and blessing. Does he agree with Rashi Tosafot or he disagrees?
He expands it.
He's agreeing.
He's agreeing, but he says...
He says that is referring to Mayim Acharonim and Birkat Hamazon, not referring to
Before
the meal. Remember I told you about the Rif?
Yeah.
Remember the Rif? Maran is when he rules halakha. He has the Rambam who says you cannot make interruptions after Mayim Acharonim. You have the Rosh, which says both of them. You should be careful about both hand washings. You have the Rif, which is like he doesn't want to get involved.
hands off.
Let's read. Do you know what the Rif does? The Rif is Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi. He makes a abridged version of the Talmud. He takes out all the stories, all the back and forth, all the discussion, and just quotes the final conclusions of the Talmud in every topic. People use the Rif a lot when they finish studying a tractate of Talmud and they want to review it quickly. They review it with the Rif. The Rif is also a posek, like the Rambam. He's not a commentator. He's making halachic decisions, but something he does, which is very interesting, he doesn't usually write things in his own words. He just narrows down, he concentrates the text of the Talmud. So he uses the language of the Talmud, he uses the expressions of the Talmud. It's not his own book, essentially. It's a they call it a redacted version of the Talmud.
An abridged version?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's more than just a bridge, it's like the essential Talmud reader. Yep.
So why isn't he called a commentator?
He's not a commentator, because he's dealing with halakha. He's ruling halakha, but leaving the Talmud as intact as possible. I mean, the Rif is still coming from this place where let's not write a new code. Let's simply take out the parts of the Talmud which are codes, and leave the rest of the fluff for somebody else who wants to read it, or the back and forth for someone wants to read it. Instead of rewriting the Talmud in its own book in Hebrew like the Rambam does, the Rif says, let's just take out all the stuff that we don't need. So the Rif writes, Damar Rabbi Chia bar Ashi. Rabbi Chia bar Ashi. So for example, look, this Talmud is originally found in Tractate Brachot on page 42. In the Rif, it's found on page 30, because he's already got rid of 12 pages of Talmud. Damar Rabbi Chia bar Ashi. Rabbi Chia bar Ashi says on the top left, Amar Rav. Rav says, Shalosh tchifoten. There are 3 things that must be done one after the next. Techef v'smicha shchita. After you lean on the animal, you must slaughter it. Techef v'gulat tefillah. After you say the blessing of Gal Yisrael, you must say tefillah. La'amidah. Techef v'tilat yadayim beracha. After you wash your hands, you make a blessing. Who does the Rif hold like? Does the Rif hold that it's referring to Mayim HaChaonim?
Doesn't say here.
We don't know. There could be 2 reasons why we don't know. Either because for the Rif it's so obvious that it's referring to Mayim HaChaonim that he doesn't feel the need to explain it, or because he doesn't want to get involved. We'll never know. Rashi on the Rif writes, "V'ntilat yadayim, demayim achonim." It's the washing of the hands of mayim achonim. Beracha, birkat hamazon, the blessing after the meal. V'lo yochal ad shivarech, and you cannot eat until you finish the blessing after the meal. So according to the Rashi on the Rif, what is the Rif saying? Is he agreeing with the Rambam or disagreeing? Agreeing.
Okay.
So far you have Rashi, Tosafot as commentaries, and then you have the Rambam in the Rif as poskim.
He's being so non-specific.
The Rif is being non-specific. That's
Still
correct.
nothing about speech, so.
Yeah, you were in it. That's going to be a while. So even though the Rif, as usual, only quotes the words of the Gemara, how do you think he understood the Gemara? You have no reason to assume that the Rif even knows of a custom not to talk after washing your hands for bread.
Right.
But we don't know that. We can't. We're assuming something.
There's no proof.
Would you assume
You can assume.
Because until then, everybody thinks it's talking about Mayim HaChaonim.
And he would offer a dissenting opinion if he felt that way. And
It-
give a source for it.
Right, but see, the argument against that is, well, he was very vague. Who says that he's talking about Mayim HaChaonim? Maybe Rashi on the Rif is commentary is wrong.
you're taking it in context, you're putting it in the context of what girls
But
are.
he
That's
would've-
right.
he
But
would've-
he's another opinion. Do you think the Rashi on the Rif is correct in its assumption? The answer is, though, we may like it to be true, we're not sure. So let's leave the Rif as probably saying like the Rambam, but undecided. I want to take you now to the world of the Tur. Who's the Tur?
Here's one of the earlier commentaries.
So who's he a son of? The Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, who's the first Ashkenazi rabbi to have a pulpit in Spain. His son, the Tur, writes the following. The Tur essentially wrote the first Shulchan Aruch. Maran uses his number system. So section 1 talks about wake up in the morning in the Tur. Maran chose section 1 to do the same thing for him. So whenever you want to look up something in the Tur, you look at the same number of chapter that you're found in the Shulchan Aruch, you'll find in the Tur is the same thing. The Tur writes in this chapter, in chapter 166, which is what we're studying now in Kodan. V'nagev yadav hetev. You must dry your hands very well. V'varech berkat hamotzi. And then you make the blessing of hamotzi. Miyad, immediately. Whose son is he? The Rosh. The Rosh's opinion was? You don't know this yet if you weren't here last night. The Rosh's opinion is that you don't talk after washing your hands for bread.
That's right.
Yeah.
He says you must dry your hands well and immediately say the blessing of hamotzi. Umihu bat. Rabbeinu Yoel. Rabbeinu Yoel is one of the Rishonim. Katav, he writes, she'en lachush al hefsek ben tila lehamotzi. That there's no reason to be concerned with making an interruption between washing your hands and hamotzi. The logic behind that? Kivan shashulchan lefanav, because the table is set in front of you. V'dato lechol, and because you have in mind to be eating soon, lo chashiv hesech hadat. You're not interrupting at all in your thoughts, because if it's in front of you, you know you're going to eat. So even if you make an interruption, it's not an interruption because the food is in front of you. This is a classic concept in halakha, that even if you get distracted, but the thing is in front of you, you're not really distracted because you're focused on the reason why you're sitting in this chair is to eat that bread. Why do we cover the challah by kiddush?
because it'll be embarrassed.
Right, I knew Jack was going to say that. No, I didn't know Jack would say
That's
it.
an embarrassing thing to
I
say.
knew somebody was going to say it. It's an embarrassing thing to
Yeah,
say, right?
it's embarrassing.
Maybe the
thing to say.
challah will be embarrassed.
Yeah. Well, I'm. You know,
Right, yeah, no,
yeah.
you said, I know.
No,
It's not your opinion. You didn't make it up.
You see, like, have your mind focused on the.
Don't eat the end piece because you lose all your Torah learning.
You love me what?
Yeah,
All your Torah learning.
Oh,
If you eat
yeah,
the end,
really?
you know that.
And
Oh,
don't eat the
that's
middle
the
piece because
problem.
that's my favorite, and I'll take it away from you. And this idea of covering the bread is because the order of blessings is
Well,
first you should do hamotzi and then drink wine, not the other way around. We're reversing the order. So, Fred, we're blessing on the wine. Wine is the way we do kiddush. But what happens if you don't have wine?
You can bless the bread
You can bless on bread.
Make
How do you
kiddush
do?
on
How do you do
bread.
kiddush on bread?
instead of saying.
You go wash your hands.
Yeah.
You come to the table.
Right.
You pick up the bread. Yom Hashishi, v'echul HaShamayim, you make the blessing, and then Sasar HaGefen, Baruch Hashem, Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz. And then what do? Baruch Hashem, Asher Kivanu V'acharta. You do that on the bread, and then you eat.
We do that sometimes.
You don't have wine. You just do bread. Because of that, what happens if you're like me, and if you had to choose between a fresh challah and a glass of wine, what would I choose? Challah. The Chachamim were worried that you might have in mind to do kiddush on the bread instead of on the wine. So what do? You cover the bread, so that you can't possibly have kavanah on the bread when you don't see it.
So where'd you get that from?
From the poskim,
Okay.
from the Shulchan Aruch. Now you're not sitting here worried like the bread is gonna start crying. Oh, it chose me over the wine. Like, yeah, the bread's been doing this every week since creation. He knows he's next. Come on.
So why do we cover it?
So that you don't have in mind to do kiddush on the bread.
And this probably happened frequently during World War II when the Jews were just totally
During a
impoverished.
lot of time when Jews didn't have wine.
Yeah,
Many
there's
times.
no wine around.
Well, you
Yeah,
look in
yeah.
some old Ashkenazi Sidurim for the Chabad Sidur. Where's Chabad? Where is Lubavitch? These guys were not wealthy people in the town of Lubavitch. They didn't always have wine. In the Sidur, it actually has the blessing for Kiddush on bread because it's an option that people exercised often.
So one way to get around it is not to put the bread on the.
Okay, so then the Kabbalists want the bread on the table. People they want the bottom covering and the top covering like the dew that fell from heaven.
Forget about Kabbalists.
I can't because the Jewish community is doing it.
Some people have 12
Well, we're
hours.
not Kabbalists.
I know, but there are a lot of things you do according to Kabbalah.
Yeah.
Whether or not you chose to do them because you were a Kabbalist.
So is it for Bolton to take the bread off the table and just
I don't know. That's a good question. I have to look at lots of hamutzi and kiddush.
Just cover
Why would
it.
you want it off the table if you're going to eat it?
well because you're going to cover
Then you
it.
solve the problem.
Yeah.
Well, let's tell you this: when I do kiddush and there's no bread on the table, it's not covered in the kitchen.
But that's
Okay.
out of sight, out of mind.
I know my kitchen is right here. On Shabbat, I can see my kitchen. I
Don't
just on
look.
the counter over there. I'm not doing
It's
hamutzi.
in another room.
Okay, so Rabbi Yoel says that even if you do make an interruption after washing your hands for bread, it's not a problem because the food is right in front of you. There's no hesech hadat. There's no interruption possible when it's right in front of you.
Food is not good. Food is in the kitchen.
The bread that you're doing, whatever it is you're about to do. Vahi detechef v'ntilat bracha, and that which it says that immediately after the washing you have to do a blessing. Mefaresh al mayim achonim. Rabbi Yoel understands that refers to mayim achonim. V'chen piresh Rav Alfis, and that's what who's Rav Alfis? What's Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi's last name? He's called the Rif, but the Alfis, Rabbi Alfis is the Rif. V'chen piresh Rav Alfis v'Rambam Zal. Both the Rif and the Rambam hold that this text of the Gemara is referring to mayim acharonim and not washing for bread. So how does the Tur understand the Rif? He doesn't see the Rif as vague at all. He understands the Rif is holding, like the Rambam, that the thing that you're not allowed to interrupt after washing is referring to mayim acharonim and Birkat Hamazon.
The tour.
Yeah, that's what the Tur is
The
saying.
tour agrees with the Rosh. It says you
No,
have.
the Tur is the son of the Rosh. He's bringing you opinions now. He's telling you shouldn't interrupt between washing your hands and Hamutzi. And he says, though Rabbi Yoel disagrees with that, as well as the Rif and the Rambam.
So how does he hold the tour?
Well, the Torah is a conversation. The Torah is not necessarily. He's telling you now opinions. The Aleph. Who's Aleph? The Adoni Avi, my master, my father. Harosh Zal. רבינו אשר of blessed memory. היה רגיל אף בראשונים שלא להפסיק. He was particular even by the first washing not to interrupt. Meaning, what did he do by the last washing?
He didn't speak.
He also didn't interrupt. Meaning, he didn't make an interruption, not in the first and not in the last. ושלא לדבר, and he didn't speak even. That was the first time you find speech. והיה רגיל כשהיה מסב בסעודה עם אחרים, and he had a custom that when he was eating a meal with other people, שהיה נוטל באחרונה. He would wash his hands at the end of everybody's turns of hand washing. Unlike the Shulchan Aruch, which we read yesterday. What did Shulchan Aruch say yesterday? Who washes first?
He does.
The first one, the Balabai, the greater one in the house.
Yeah.
But what does Maran say? But the Rosh used to wash his hands last. And he doesn't explain why. Now you understand why? Shelo להפסיק, so that he wouldn't make an interruption. ושלא לדבר, and not to talk. Notice that the tool is making a separation between interruption and speaking. Those are two different things. Speaking is not an interruption. Speaking is its own category of speaking. ומתוך הירושלמי משמע, and from the Yerushalmi, you see, גם כן, דהי דתכף דת ברכה, that from the Jerusalem Talmud you see that which it says you cannot interrupt between washing and the blessing. Da'amayim rishonim kai. Thank you, the Torah, for throwing a wrench in our machinery. He says, I have a proof from the Jerusalem Talmud that this teaching of don't interrupt between washing your hands and the blessing refers to the washing of your hands for bread.
Ooh.
Things just got hot in here. He's pulling a Talmudic source to knock down the
His
Shaar.
father, right?
No, his father brought that source. De'ita hatam hatochef b'racha l'ntilat yadayim eino nizok b'chol ota seuda. Because the Yerushalmi says that somebody who makes sure to immediately do the blessing after washing their hands for bread, it doesn't say that. It's someone who would, immediately you make the blessing and the washing right next to each other, you will not get hurt that entire meal. No harm will happen to you that entire meal. What does the Talmud Yerushalmi seem to be saying? The Talmud Yerushalmi says, you should not interrupt between washing and a blessing. It doesn't say which one. It says, and therefore you will not be harmed in that entire meal. Which water does he seem to be talking about? Mayim Achronim?
First one.
No, the first one. Mayim by Hamotzi. So the Tur just pulled out a sword over here. The Tur says, listen Rambam, listen Rabbi Noel, my father's right. I found a proof to my father from the Talmud Yerushalmi. The Talmud Yerushalmi says that if you're careful not to interrupt between the blessing, the washing and the blessing, it doesn't say which one, that you will not be hurt that entire meal, which seems to imply it's talking about the blessing before the meal. Because how would you say the blessing after the meal, you won't be harmed in the meal that you just had?
What does this mean, be harmed?
Okay, there's a number of things. Like if you say Kiddush Levana, no harm will befall you the entire month. This is already out of my
But it says
jurisdiction.
during the meal.
Yeah.
No
You
harm
might
will
choke.
Oh,
You might get
Is that
food poisoning.
Kabbalistic or?
Yeah, no, it's Talmudic. Meaning, it's a sign, some kind of protection. What is Rabbi Yoel's opinion and why? Rabbi Yoel's opinion is, which water is it referring to? Mayim Achronim. And why? What's his proof? It's not an interruption because what's in front of you? The food. Very good. What does the tool conclude to be the Rif's opinion? So if you were unclear about the Rif, what he held, the tool says that the Rif holds like
The Rambam.
the Rambam. That very good. That. Which water is it referring to?
The first one.
The second one, the Mayim Achronim. The Rosh, the Tu's father, evidently was of which opinion? He held you shouldn't talk.
Before.
In both of them, you shouldn't talk.
Yeah.
Because it could be referring to either of them.
Right.
And what proof does the tool bring to his father's opinion from the Talmud Yerushalmi?
So you just said.
We covered that.
We just did.
We did. Oh.
It says there that if you don't interrupt between washing and the blessing, you won't be harmed the entire meal.
Yeah.
Which seems to imply, it's talking about Mayim Rishonim, the first waters. So if you would go now to any Orthodox synagogue and say, tell me, why don't you talk after you wash your hands for bread? Just watch people mumble. Interruption. Ask them, what does Rabbi Yoel say? What about the Rambam and the Rif? Do they agree with each other? Argue that they don't know what you're talking about. They're doing something that they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. Bet Yosef. Who's the Bet Yosef? Maran, very good.
Maran, George Carr.
Bet Yosef is written by Maran Rabbi Yosef Karo. It's a commentary on which book?
Shulchan Aruch.
No, the Shulchan Aruch was written by him.
Also, based it off of the term.
Very good. The Bet Yosef is his commentary on the tool. So now you heard what the tool just said. Rabbi Yonatan does that. Now Maran is going to tell you his opinion on everything he just read.
He doesn't agree with the Torah.
Yes, we're going to see now. Maran writes, "Vivarech bekat hamotzi miyad." You should say bekat hamotzi immediately. That's what the Torah wrote. I mean, you shouldn't interrupt between washing and bekat hamotzi. Says Maran. This is Maran here. Mishum de mashmale, because it is applied to him. Dehad amrina beperek ketzad mevachim. That which we said in the first source from Talmud Brachot 42a. Techef netilat yadayim beracha. That immediately after washing you have to make the blessing. Bintilash lifnei aseuda ke'amal. The tool seems to understand. And this is referring to the first waters, not the last waters. Aval Rabbeinu Yoel, but Rabbeinu Yoel, Mifaresh, he explains, top of page 2. Lei b'mayim acharonim. Rabbeinu Yoel says, no, that piece of Talmud is not referring to mayim rishonim, to the beginning waters, but rather mayim acharonim, the end waters. We know this already. De'ilu b'rishonim, and not tzarich etchof na'devacha. By the first waters, you have no need to make these two things right next to each other, washing and blessing. V'chein katvu haghot maimoniyot, and that's what the haghot maimoniyot write b'perek vav michot brachot. In the 6th chapter of the laws of blessings of the Rambam, b'shem Rabbeinu Simcha, in the name of Rabbeinu Simcha, another Rishon, meaning Rabbeinu El, the Rif, the Rambam, Rabbeinu Simcha, Rashi, Tosafot, all of them say, you're allowed to do whatever you want after Mayim Rishonim. It's only Mayim Acharonim that's a problem. V'gam HaRambam katav sham, and even the Rambam writes there, the techef and tilat yadayim shachar suda bekat hamazon, that immediately after washing your hands at the end of the meal, you cannot interrupt until you do bekat hamazon. U'ma shekatav Rabbeinu, and that which our rabbi, our master, taught us. Who is our master? Who's Maran speaking about? Who is he writing a commentary on? Both? The two. Look at Maran's humility. Maran is writing a commentary on the two, and he calls him Rabbeinu, our rabbi. People can't even do that today when they disagree with somebody. He could still be our rabbi, even though we don't agree with him. What happened to the respect between people?
Very good point.
He always considered Maran doesn't even call him Rabbeinu, Rabbeinu. This is called our rabbi, our rabbi, our rabbi. U'ma shekatav Rabbeinu sheken piresh harif, and that which Rabbeinu writes that the Rif also holds that it's talking about Mayim Acharonim. Listen what Maran writes. Eni yodem hechan lamad ken. I have no idea where the tool got this information from. That the Rif agrees with the Rambam. Sharei Harif lo katav bazeh ela divrei hagmara. The Rif only wrote the exact words the Gemara said. He didn't explain. V'chol ma she'efshar lefaresh b'shon hagmara, then anything that you can read into the Gemara itself, yesh lefaresh b'shon harif gamken. You can also read into the Rif. Meaning, says Maran, I would love that the Rif agrees with the Rambam, but it's not evident that the Rif agrees with the Rambam. And the Rif only quotes the Talmud. And just like some of the Chachamim could read the Talmud one way and some could read the Talmud the other way, you have to agree that the Rif can be read in two different ways. And therefore, I don't understand where the tool became so clear to him that the Rif holds that this is referring only to Mayim Acharonim. The more you read Maran, the more you understand. How do you learn halakha with that? It's a puzzling thing to me. I think in general, this approach of reading books and not believing in them is because people, before they study halakha, they always study Bet Yosef and they study Maran, Shulchan Aruch, and they're taught from a young age you can't follow these rabbis. And then they end up, by the time you read a halakha that's true, you know, don't follow it. That's what they taught you. It's like the way people grow up. We don't paskin like the Gemara. I don't know what that means. Everyone says that. What does it mean? Well, of course we rule like the Gemara.
They never say who they paskin by.
Okay, there are many opinions of the Gemara. But when you train a person from a young age, we don't follow what it says in the Gemara. So what's the point of studying this book?
Or the Rambam.
That's what everybody says. Oh, we don't follow the Rambam, we just read him. It's a strange thing, isn't it? A strange education. U'ma shekatav, and that which the tool writes, demitoch ha-Yerushalmi, that he has a proof from the words of the Yerushalmi, dahi detechem ta'bachad ha'mayim rishonim kai, that it's referring to the first waters. Di'ita hatam, that it's written there, tochef b'chan te'etadayim, the one who doesn't interrupt between the blessing and the hand washing, eino nizok b'chol uta suda, is not harmed the entire meal. Kulomar v'i she'in tila chonai kim ken kvar sa'ad umay dehava hava. If it was referring to Mayim Acharonim, what does it help you that you will be protected during the meal? You've already finished your meal. V'chen ketu b'agat maimoniyot, that's what the Hagot Maimoniyot writes there. V'chen nachon lasot, and therefore it's proper to do this. Lizaher gam b'mayim rishonim, to be careful not to talk or not to interrupt after Mayim Rishonim also. This is what Maran writes in the Beit Yosef. What is the Beit Yosef struggle with the Torah's explanation of the Rif? We elaborate on that. What does he view the strict meaning of the halakha to be? And yet, what does he actually say one should do? What does Maran view the strict halakha to be? Can you talk? Can you interrupt after the first waters?
No.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And what is he suggesting though you should do?
You shouldn't.
You shouldn't.
You
do.
shouldn't.
Yes. Why? Because he views that proof from the Yerushalmi compelling. It's compelling. Now here is something that I normally don't do. I don't normally quote from the Yalkut Yosef. I won't put it on camera one. But this is Rabbi Yosef's son. It's the brother of the author of the book we have here. He's the current Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel. And at that time that I made these source sheets, almost 10 years ago, this was the clearest source that explained what I needed explained. I couldn't find this sentence anywhere else. I'm sure today already if I would look, I couldn't. The Yalkut Yosef is coming to answer the apparent proof from the Yerushalmi. Meaning Yalkut Yosef is coming out to protect the Rambam and Rabbeinu Simcha and Rabbeinu Yoel and all of those poskim and the Rashi and Tosafot from this proof the Torah brings from the Yerushalmi. He writes, Ube Pashtut, and from the simple mashmaut meaning of Divrei HaYerushalmi, of the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Ayri B'tirat Yadayim Mesudah, it seems it's talking about washing your hands for the meal. The Ayri B'tirat Shel Mayim Acharonim, because if it's talking about washing your hands for Mayim Acharonim, May En HaSatan Mekatreg B'ota Sudah, the Satan will not harm you in that whole meal. What does that mean? You already finished your meal, so how do you not get hurt during the meal for something you haven't yet done? So it cannot be talking about Mayim Acharonim, it's talking about Mayim Rishonim. That's what the Torah's proof from the Talmud Yerushalmi is. Then he writes, Ela diyesh lomar, what do you must say? The May de Kamar and the Satan mekatreg kol adat sudam, that the Satan will not speak bad of you that entire meal. Ayri el ha'avar, it's talking about the past. Shloi nazek ma'machalim shachal, meaning we can also interpret the Yerushalmi, saying, no, what do you mean? That which it says you will not be harmed from that meal if you don't talk between Mayim Acharonim and B'kan Hamazon is true. Meaning, the effects of food last after you finish your meal. Now we're saying, you won't get hurt from anything that you ate during the meal. Why are you so convinced, says the Yalkut Yosef, that this has to be talking about the first waters? And I read here in parentheses, and look over there for all his proofs. He brings a significant amount of proofs that this is correct. So meaning, what is Yalkut Yosef saying? He's saying, dear Rabbeinu Hatul, don't be so convinced that this is referring about Mayim Rishonim. There's a way to read this, and he brings sources. There's a way to read this that it's referring to Mayim Acharonim as well. Hari the Rambam knew this Yerushalmi also. Rabbeinu Simcha, Rabbeinu Yoel, they knew this Yerushalmi also. Rashi and Tosafot knew this Yerushalmi also, and they didn't seem to be bothered by it. So meaning there must be a way that those Chachamim read this, and that's what his proof is. See, it's hard to be a posek. It's hard to learn halakha. You have to know how to think, not just think straight and to hold a lot of information, how to decide between opinions. Everything sounds compelling. A little bit of bravery, a little bit of sometimes boldness, and no fear. Can't be a posek who's afraid. You see, these are very basic sources. It's about a topic that it's not really a big deal. What happens when you talk? It's not a big deal. Imagine applying this kind of splitting hairs in a bigger issue. Life and death matters. Shulchan Aruch. We read this last night. Let's read it quickly. I know that I'm at 10 o'clock, so just I'll finish as quick as I can. יש אומרים שאני צריך לדזרם להפסיק בנטילה להמוציא. This is what we're studying now in Kollel. Some rabbis say that you don't have to be worried about making an interruption between washing and hamotzi. ויש אומרים שצריך לזהר. And there are those who say that you have to be careful. Who are the rabbis who say you don't? You don't have to be careful? Rambam. Rabbeinu Yoel. Rabbeinu Simcha. Some say even the Rif. Who are the ones that say you can't? The Rosh. The two. The son of the Rosh. V'tov lizaher. Says Maran, you should be careful. Meaning Maran is consistent with his final ruling in the Beit Yosef. Sometimes you find that between the Beit Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch, Maran changes his mind. But here, you find Maran is ruling, like he said in the beginning, the proof from the Yerushalmi is compelling, and if you can, you should be careful. And I told you last night, the word V'tov lizaher, it means it's a good idea. Meaning, it's not a halakha. If Maran wanted to say it's a halakha, he would say, and it's forbidden to speak. Vim Shaar Kadei Hiluch Kabed Ama Mikehsek says the Rama, and if you wait longer than 10 seconds, it's considered hefsek anyways.
Right.
In which case, nobody follows the wash. That's where we ended off last night. Who doesn't make an interruption? And the real test is not just what Maran writes. What do the poskim say about Mayim Achronim? What they say about Mayim Achronim is going to be telling as to what you can do after you wash your hands for bread. Shulchan Aruch, in chapter 179, writes, Gamar Sudato, when you finish your meal, V'natal yadav b'mayim achronim, and you wash your hands with mayim achronim, eno yechol echol v'lo yishtot ad shelo b'chad mazon. You cannot speak, or you cannot eat or drink until you say b'chad mazon. Okay, from the above two halachot in the Shulchan Aruch, what does his halachic opinion seem to be in this regard? Meaning, when Maran says you cannot speak after you do Mayim Achronim, that's not what he says by Mayim Rishonim. He says you should not speak. He says you cannot speak by Mayim Achronim, meaning he believes the main halakha to be correct, like the Rambam, like those poskim who say Rashid that is referring to Mayim Rishonim.
He's giving some credence to the opinion. Not that it's binding, but that it's
Right,
preferred.
correct. Mishnah Buram. Mishnah Buram is something fascinating. I don't have time really for it today, but we'll do it. The Ma'adam Rinan Bashas, that which we say in the Shas, Techav Didat Yadayim Suda, that immediately after the blessing you have to eat your meal. Svira lei, דהיינו שלא יתעסק בינתיים באיזה עסק או מעשה עד שיסר דתו בשיחה הרבה דמביא לידי הסחת דעת. That you shall not do any actions between washing your hands and having your meal. Or you cannot have a lot of conversation. What does that mean?
You get lost in a
Don't-
discussion.
Yes,
And you forget
because it will bring you to forgetting what you're at the table for. Even if it's the words of Torah, if you speak too much, it'll distract you. According to Mishnah Black, can you speak a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Aval im yoshev batel, but if you're sitting there at the table doing nothing, ve'ino oseh b'intayim shum ma'aseh, and you're not also doing any kind of charades or none of that stuff. Af sheshoheh harbe, even though you wait a long time, or afilu mesiach me'at, or even if you speak a little bit, en lachush, that's no problem. Who's the Mishnah Berurah? The Chafetz Chaim. It's not some fringe Sephardic posek I pulled out of my hat for you. Even if you speak a little bit, en lachush, you don't have to worry. What about the opinion of the Ramah that you can't wait more than 10 seconds? How does he answer that? This is brilliant. Watch. Kevan shashulchan aruch lefanav, because the table is set in front of you. V'dato lechol miyad, and because the food is there and you're planning to eat immediately, lo masiach dato. It's not an interruption. It's if you're still talking a little bit. It's not an interruption because the food is there. Whose opinion is he relying on right now? That which we quoted in the tool of Rabbi Yoel. Rabbi Yoel says the reason you can interrupt as much as you want after Mayim Rishonim is because it's the food is there. You're sitting at the meal. Even if you're sitting here talking, it's not a big deal. What does the Mishnah Berurah do? He adds a stringency. Don't talk too much. I sometimes make that happen here. The moment I see people start talking a lot, like real conversations, I start hamotzi. I hold you can have real conversations, but some people come here, they think it's a mitzvah to talk. It's a little bit, hello, shalom, come have a chair. That's not a problem at all. Not even according to Ashkenazim. I sometimes don't understand where people's halachot come from. Because here, this is as mainstream of an Ashkenazi source as I could bring you. This is not an Ashkenazi Sephardic divide. I mean, according to Mishnah Berurah, even Maran would be okay with you speaking a little bit. Speaking is not an interruption. You have to remember that in your
You
head.
said Maran or Ramah?
Ramah. No, I said Maran.
Okay,
Yes,
Maran.
Even Maran-
What about Ramah?
No, Ramah would hold you can't wait more than 10 seconds. So if you
Okay.
wait more than 10 seconds, you can't fulfill the Ramah's opinion anyways. The Mishnah Berurah is trying to justify why even Ashkenazim wait longer than 10 seconds. The reason?
They're
Because the
waiting.
table is set
Yeah,
and you're waiting for the meal, so
Waiting.
it's not an interruption. And he says the same thing applies to speaking. If you speak just a little bit and the food is there, you're waiting, it's not an interruption. That means that even Maran, who says you should be careful not to interrupt between washing your hands and bread because of the Rosh, even Maran would have, Mishnah Berurah is saying, a little bit of talking is fine. Here, why do you have a chair? Oh, why don't you guys move over? Can you bring this? Not just little conversation. I mean, you shouldn't sit here and now give a Dvar Torah. Yeah.
Is there any discussion about whether Netilat Yadayim is its own separate bracha mitzvah from the bread? What is the space in between the two so important?
It's washing your hands so that you can eat the bread, because the Kohanim used to wash their hands before they ate the bread.
I understand. But why is it imperative that space?
Because there shouldn't be a break between brachot. I mean, if it's
Well,
all one brachot.
But nobody's remember that nobody's saying
Well,
that.
it's
Nobody's saying
continuous.
this breath has to be one after the next. The Rosh is just saying maybe you could read the Talmud that way. However, the next Mishnah Berurah is crazy. I'm going to skip the last two. We'll talk about it. I'll read telling me outside. The Mishnah Berurah says, the second paragraph under Mishnah Berurah, it's this one. Look here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mikre Hefsek. He says, the Ramah says that even waiting 10 seconds is a Hefsek. V'lo mikitechev, it's not considered immediately after hand washing. V'im ken lefi ma shepasak המחבר טוב ויזהר תחוף את לסעודה, יש להיזהר גם לשהות בינתיים שיעור כזה. This is according to Maran. He calls Maran the Mechaber. That's what Ashkenazim call Maran, the author of the Shulchan Aruch. That which the author of the Shulchan Aruch Maran says that you should try not to interrupt between hand washing and Birkat Hamotzi. He says that also means just waiting silently. And if you wish to fulfill that opinion, says the Mishnah Berurah, really you have to make sure not to pass more than 10 seconds between hand washing and Hamotzi. Veda, he said you should know. Di'ikar din tchifa hamuskar b'siman zeh. The whole conversation in this entire chapter of Shulchan Aruch, that you should be careful in not interrupting between hand washing and hamotzi. Zehu rak mitzvah lechatchila. This is only in a super ideal setting. Avad b'di avad, but after the fact, afilu shahar harbe, even if you wait a long time, or hifsik b'ntayim, or you really interrupted in between. En sarich lachzor v'litol yadav. You do not have to go back and wash your hands. Kol shlo yisiach dato b'ntayim mishmerat yadav. So long as you haven't forgotten to the point where you got your hands dirty again. If your hands didn't get dirty again, says the Mishnah Berurah, even if you sat there and you spoke for an hour, if you did all kinds of work, you moved tables and chairs, and your hands are clean, there's no need to go back and wash your hands. Meaning, you will not find a posek who will tell you that when you speak after you wash your hands, or you interrupt after you wash your hands, that you have to go back and wash your hands.
Do people actually do that?
Of course,
Yeah,
all the
they
time.
do. They do.
Yes.
All the time.
They do.
I've seen it many times.
And then,
So they go like, whoops, and then
Yeah,
Back to
that's
the-
exactly what happens.
I'm reading this to you out loud because outside of the page, both the Mishnah Berurah and the Chayei, because we're going to do them in a few weeks in the Shulchan Aruch itself. We're going to get to that chapter of B'ezrat Hashem. Both the Mishnah Berurah and the Chayei say that it's forbidden to talk after you do Mayim Achonim. And if you talk or you interrupt or you do whatever after Mayim Achonim, you have to go back and wash your hands again. What I wish to show you is both the Mishnah Berurah and the Chayei, which are the two mainstream Ashkenazi poskim, aside from the Aruch HaShulchan, before the Jews leave Europe to the United States or to Israel, both of them treat Mayim Achonim as so strict that if you interrupt after you do Mayim Achonim, you must go back and wash your hands again, like the Rambam said, which we read last night. But nobody says that if you interrupt after you wash your hands for Hamotzi, that you have to go back and wash your hands. And at this point in the shiur, when I'm ending, I'm asking you this question. How could the state of affairs in the Jewish community be so mirror opposite of what it says, not just in Shulchan Aruch, not just in the Rambam, also in the Tur, also in the Rosh, also in Mishnah Berurah and Chayei? How could it be that everybody thinks, I'm talking also rabbis, that after you make an interruption when you wash your hands, you have to go back and wash again? But Mayim Achonim, you can do whatever you want after Mayim Achonim.
You can even not do
Nobody
it.
asks.
You can even skip Mayim Achonim.
Yeah.
I mean, how did we even get to that place if it's not absolute ignorance of halakha? This is not a halakha that happens like once a year. Today someone asked me a question about Canaanite slaves when they're freed, what their halakha is. So you know, it's been a really long time since I looked at the laws of Canaanite slaves. You know, I don't know. But the laws of Netilat Yadayim, you wash your hands for bread maybe even every day. Some people twice a day, some people once a week. So this happens all the time. In every Jewish house, I think the defining feeling around the Shabbat table is the whole quiet time between the Netilat. Almost when you go to a house, they don't do it, you think it's am I a Jewish home? That's what people feel when they come to my house. That feeling is a big deal. And how did that become blown out of proportion? When the laws of Ma'am Achronim, they're not even known. It's not that they're minimized.
Yeah.
They're not known at all. Aside from, you're dealing with a Jewish community that is so painfully ignorant of halakha. That all the things that we complain about, why does the Jewish community do this, why do we persecute that, the root of that is the Jewish community is not actually following Judaism. And it may hurt to hear that, and you may be talking about a lot of people that you love and that you care about and that you're close to, and I'm not from slandering people, but you should not be afraid that you're another Jew in another generation of Jewish history that is knowing how to learn things on their own, that is fighting a fight of there's Judaism and there's what the Jewish street does. We've been fighting this war since Avraham Avinu stood on the other side of the world. It's not a new thing for us. There's no such thing as mainstream in Judaism, because mainstream in this world means to be a Christian or a Muslim. And we're Jewish. We're the crazy 13 million that look at the rest of the world, we got it right, you guys are all losers. We're the crazy people. And so why should it surprise you in the community that you're also going to be the crazy person who knows halakha about washing hands, and everybody else got it wrong? It shouldn't hurt you. Of course everybody else got it wrong. They didn't get it wrong maliciously. It's not that they read the text and perverted it. They just never read the text.
Yeah.
They just never went there. They don't even know. Why don't you talk? Ask them why they cover the challah before Hamutzi.
They say
What?
that.
They don't know. They don't know. And you're living in a world where Jews don't know. So the only solution is educate yourself. Just like you know the laws of traffic, you know the laws of whatever field you're involved in, you must know the laws of the Torah. It's your legal system. If you don't know it, so who's going to know it? Clearly you can't trust the people around you to educate you about the things you're supposed to know.